With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight, live in the Bourbon Life studios, it's my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, buddy?
Hey, Mark, I am doing great out here. Always good to be back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. How are you doing in there?
Yeah. Oh, doing well. You know, I always say we're live. It doesn't matter if we're all together or if we're remote. It's always live because, you know, we are live. We're here. We're actually in person. So Matt and I are hanging out here in the studios. Our guest is actually remote with us tonight, but I'm really excited about this show. This is a multiple time guest, little different twist on this one tonight. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But before we jump into it, I do want to thank all of our sponsors. We appreciate everything that they do for us. As I say, every show, we could not do what we do without the support of our sponsors. And we sincerely appreciate what they do for us. It allows us week after week to bring you guys the best content and the best guests that we can bring you. And we're super excited always to have our sponsors backing us. And we really just appreciate everything they do for us. So Matt, with that said, man, you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
I would love to. Let's get into it. He is a third-time guest on the show. We had him on episodes 12 and also episode 154. And now we have him back for what episode are we on, Mark?
This is 180.
180, back for episode 180. He is the whiskey maker for Outsider Spirits, Ari Sussman. Ari, welcome back.
Great to see you. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, man. We're thrilled to you know, I wish I could see you in person. I feel like I got to see you like every couple of months, and it's been a kind of a long stretch here that I've not actually seen you in person, man. So I'm having Ari withdrawals. So this will hopefully tide me over, man, until September.
Soon enough, right?
That's right. The Bourbon Festival's coming up. It'll be great to get to see you down there. But man, we are thrilled to have you back. I'm excited to talk about the new brand, this brand that you're working with now from Outsider Spirits. It's the Whiskey JYPSI. Super fun, great looking bottle. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. But I tell you what, before we jump into everything, you just want to tell everybody a little bit about the expression itself, what it is that we're actually going to be drinking tonight. Ari?
Absolutely. So this is Whiskey JYPSI is the name of the whiskey. And it's we call it batch number 1 of our legacy expression. So there will be multiple expressions within Whiskey JYPSI. This is the legacy. And legacy is sort of the premium offering. It's also the expression where the blender kind of has the most freedom. The idea here is that Outsider Spirits, through Whiskey JYPSI, is able to sort of really explore international whiskey blends and build blends regardless of where products come from, entirely based on the merit of the spirits and how well they complement each other. And we thought it would be fun for this first blend to sort of riff on a bourbon mash bill, on a conventional bourbon mash bill, right. 21% bourbon mash bill. So in sourcing different sort of grain-forward spirits, we were looking for spirits that were well-aged, properly matured, spirits that would have been completely suitable to be releases by themselves. We wanted to bring them together in sort of blend different categories of whiskey and do it in the proportions of a bourbon mash bill, which seemed like a playful, fun, sort of whimsical place to start. It turned out that once we kind of set on that path and acquired lots of different spirit inputs, potential spirit inputs, it was a really amazing experience putting this whiskey together, because there's just a lot of ideas and whiskey traditions blended together in it.
Yeah. So what we're looking at, and it's funny, because I was doing my notes today and I've looked at this mash bill, the combination of whiskeys, and I never realized until you just said that the combination of the actual whiskeys is a play on what would be it's kind of a typical bourbon, a bourbon mash bill. So it's 70% of a bourbon, 21% of a rye whiskey, and then 9% of an actual. I didn't, when I was preparing it, I never even realized that, Ari.
It's a little bit of an Easter egg, right? So you didn't necessarily come right out and say that. I mean, it's clearly a blend of different whiskey categories, cross-category blend of whiskeys, and it's pretty explicit. We talk about what it is on the back and how old each expression is and where it's from. But yeah, the little Easter egg is that it's sort of in the form of a deconstructed bourbon mash bill.
Man, I consider myself a fairly smart guy, but I completely missed that one. So it's 70% comprised of a bourbon, and the bourbons are actually, it's 7 and 8 year old bourbon, and the bourbons actually, there's kind of a twist on that too, right? So it's a 99% corn and 1% malt, right?
We were looking to comprise 70% of the blend once we sort of determined that we were going to have fun with this reconstituted bourbon mash bill. We went looking for really well-made spirits that exemplified the characteristics of corn. What's going to be 70% of this blend? So we looked for, it's not just like a arbitrary bourbon mash bill. What we really were looking for was a unique character of corn. And we found it in this 7 and 8 year old bourbon made with 99% corn, which is very different than a 36% corn or even a 21% corn.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what's funny. Yeah. Cause now it like my head's kind of blown now that my mind's like, okay, now I get it. Cause it's really 99% corn, which is almost all corn. And the total blend is 70% of that. So, which is like saving 70% corn, makes a lot of sense. But now 21% of this is actually a Canadian rye that's like 20 years old, right? Or something.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason we chose 7 and 8 year old bourbon is because bourbon's really fantastic at 7 and 8 years old. In a way, oftentimes a 7 or 8 year old bourbon still retains some of the grain character that we were looking for. Once you get into 10, 12, 15 years old, the grain character is really lost on a bourbon. So we wanted to kind of max out the corn character. And then similarly for the rye component, rye is, I believe that rye is kind of the most interesting of the whiskey grains sort of in general. And it provides either the distiller or the whiskey blender sort of the widest spectrum of characteristics from which to draw. So if you're a distiller, rye presents characteristics and intensities of flavor that you're not really going to get with any other grain. And then as a blender, because there are so many different ryes available from different places in the world that had different maturation conditions, for instance, just want to pick one important variable. There are so many ryes to choose from, and we selected one that was 20 years old, and aged in Canada, aged in a cool climate. And cool climates, spirits mature very differently in a cool climate than they do in a warm climate. Right. And the character of this rye could have only, been achieved over decades of maturation in a cold climate.
Gotcha. And then you round it out with 9% of a 4-year-old single malt, right?
So, right. American single malt, a category that I think a lot of people are keeping their eye on. They want to see what happens with it. We were able to acquire quite a few different American single malts, and we sort of built this blend as a series of blind tastings. And the components that we chose won the blind tastings when we combined
Nice.
them.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. So, I mean, it's really, well, I mean, it's like, I can't believe I did not catch on to this. Ari, while I was
it's all right. It's like,
man,
it's kind of in there.
Yeah. No doubt about it. So, Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the nose on this one, man?
Well, first off, Mark, I gotta side with you. I missed it as well until Ari started talking about it, and then I'm looking here, and it all came together. I'm like, oh, okay. I like what you did there, Ari. That's clever. It's super cool. But the nose is got a lot of different flavors and characteristics going on. At first, I picked up a lot of like caramel and butterscotch and that sweet corn, like a Thanksgiving corn pudding or like a cream corn. But the rye comes through and shines as well. I'm picking some of the rye spice, a little bit of rye grain. There's also like I pick up some mint or something herbal with it as well. And the malt does a good job of kind of rounding it out with a savory, kind of crackery, malty cereal note on the end of it. But it all blends together really well. It's really complex, but also really homogeneous. For as much as you're able to taste out and chase all these different flavors and aromas, it blends really well and just noses really well as a complete bourbon.
Yeah, Matt, I agree with that. And the funny thing is, when I nosed this initially, if I didn't know it was a blend of 3 different whiskeys, I could easily be confused and say, yes, this is a bourbon. I mean, I think in my mind, I would be able to just say, okay. I mean, it's got a lot of those notes, like Matt said, the caramel that comes through. It could be a high rye bourbon. You got some rye spiciness maybe that comes through. I saw a review Fred Minnick did. I could talk about that a little bit later, but he mentioned chocolate, and now for some reason in my mind, I keep getting almost like a chocolate note on the nose, maybe from the malt. I don't know. I mean, there's not a big percentage of it, but for some reason in my mind that still comes through. But what else is out there, Ari, that we're missing on this?
I think you got a lot of things. I get a lot of leather.
Okay.
And I get some wood, like some cedar. Not oak. I get, other than oak wood, I get like wood spices.
Gotcha.
There's some of that herbaceousness coming through. I think there's sometimes in this is at 115 proof.
Oh yeah,
and there is a lot between 3 flavorful spirits. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of compounds, and if you add a little bit of water, if you feel like adding some water and bringing the proof down, the viscosity will change, and different characteristics will sort of present themselves.
Gotcha.
So it's a fun, interactive whiskey. At bottle strength, I get a lot of that spice coming through in the butterscotch for sure, and the sort of leather and some of these nice deep characteristics. And then it changes a little bit when I add some drops of water.
And Ari, it's funny because you mentioned leather. That was the second thing, and I forgot when I said there's 2 things I was going to say. I've said one, forgot the second. The second was that when I first tasted this, because I cracked the bottle the other day. I usually wait until we have the guest on, but I couldn't wait, so I cracked this. But it tastes to me like an older bourbon. I get those notes. That leather came through, like you mentioned. So to me, because I've been drinking a lot of like 12, 15, 17-year-old bourbons and ryes lately, for some reason, I've been fortunate enough to track some of these bottles down.
Must be nice.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, man.
Where have I been?
If I could drink it. But this was very reminiscent to me when I was drinking this of a bourbon that's been aged a significantly long time. So I kind of got that in terms of that leather note. That's what I usually interpret an older bourbon, kind of having those types of notes. Mm-hmm. So that was the second point that I was going to say and completely forgot. So, all right, let's talk about you. I mean, we've had you on the show twice, but first time with Whiskey JYPSI. So I think it's always great to kind of revisit with our guests and talk a little bit about who they are. So if you don't mind, just take a few minutes and kind of share with our guests a little bit about who you are, your background. Yes, you and Matt both are Michigan guys, so you can talk about that and, rah, Michigan and all that good stuff. But yeah, tell us about that and how you got into the whiskey industry.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a big family that very much, anytime we would get together, which could be several times a month, there was generally a lot of food and beverage involved, strong culinary sort of Jewish meals going on. A lot of folks gardened and would bring vegetables or salads that they grew in their garden to family meals, and that's kind of the environment that I grew up in. Later on, I thought I wanted to get into politics and in my early 20s, I had a job at the state of Michigan legislature, at the
Nice.
State Capitol. And I was like not very happy there. And, I had always had this love of food and drink. I believe it came from, just early childhood memories. I ended up quitting my job at the State Capitol and moving to France and getting a job, the first job I could find, which happened to be at a winery. I had always been kind of into wine and partial to wine. That was my beverage of choice. And so I was very happy to get a job at a winery. I learned all about wine production, sort of fell in love with that. Stayed in France for 3 months the first time, came back to the States and decided I wanted to sort of work in the world of wine. So I got a job with a hospitality group, training bartenders basically, educating them on wine, which turned into sort of developing cocktail lists and learning more about spirits and trying to figure out how different restaurants could have classes where they could explore the world of wine and wines of the Loire Valley and then wines of South America. As I got into cocktails and I got into spirits, those classes sort of shifted to let's take a tour of Scotland through the different whiskey producing regions, and let's explore different brandy houses in France and things like that. And I kind of noticed that I was like drifting more and more towards spirits because they were just so exciting to me. I love wine and it's really great. And I ended up in France for a couple more summers making wine, but gradually got really into spirits. And then I learned that Dr. Chris Berglund at Michigan State University, where I'd gone to college, was going to start the first distilling program in the United States to train distillers. And I went up there to meet with him. And I didn't really mean to go up there to get a job, although that's what ended up happening. I went up there because I had been reading these old cocktail magazines or books. And they would reference these spirits that hadn't been produced since before Prohibition. Right. My idea was like meet Dr. Berglund and start reproducing these old spirits that these cocktails call for that nobody's seen in a long time. But when I met Dr. Berglund and saw what he was putting together, and he offered me the opportunity to come and help essentially manage the distillery, where these students would come and learn about spirit production and craft distilleries would come to develop their spirits, I had to take it. So I ended up working with Dr. Berglund, the late, great Dr. Berglund, for about half a decade, developing spirits for primarily craft distilleries, but also some really big distilleries. Really scores and scores of commercially available spirits, worked with a ton of really talented distillers and students who are now seated all over the industry. It's like Michigan State has these little representatives all over the place, and companies big and small. It's phenomenal to see. And then later on, I got involved in working with a number of brands after leaving the Michigan State Distillery. And it's just been an amazing experience working with all kinds of brands, mostly on the whiskey side, but I've certainly worked on gins and rums and liqueurs as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. I mean, you've got a great background, great resume, great experience, and it helps so many different people. And it's so funny. It's crazy to me that Michigan State was the first school that actually started doing a distilling program. I know UK, being here in Lexington, of course, everybody thinks, oh, Kentucky would be the person or the state to do that. But it wasn't. I mean, it was Michigan State. And that's just kind of crazy.
And it seems random, but let me put my Michigan hat on for a moment. Michigan State University was the very first agricultural school in the country. Mm-hmm. It was the first land grant school where the federal government decided that they were going to give federal funds to begin agricultural schools that were going to merge agriculture and science in a way that nobody else had. And in 1855, the U.S. government passed the Morrill Act to make these land grant schools. Michigan Agricultural College, later Michigan State, was the very first one. It has a sort of storied position as far as agricultural education and blending agriculture and engineering. Michigan State's been at the center of that for 175 years. So in a sense, what we're doing with distilling is we're blending agriculture with engineering. It's called value-added agriculture. That's what distilling is. And
that's a great point. I don't think a lot of people realize that or even think about, you don't think about bourbon or rye whiskey as an agricultural product, but I mean, it really is. When you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, it is an agricultural product. So I'm glad you said that. But yeah, Michigan State, still just can't wrap my head around it, Ari. That's great. Well, we're almost at the end of round one, but before we close it out though, let's just kind of give a little bit of a teaser, because the brand you're working with, Whiskey JYPSI, it's a combination. It's kind of a collaboration between a pretty well-known artist and an entrepreneur plus yourself. Can you give us just a little bit of a teaser about what the brand is and who's involved with it? And then we can come back in round two. We can really dive into that a little more.
Yeah. So I should just say that this brand is the brainchild of Raj Alva, serial entrepreneur, absolutely brilliant visionary business leader, great human being, and Eric Church, country music Hall of Famer,
right,
performing artist. And they got together and decided that they wanted to innovate on the whiskey side. And this company was born, and some really exciting releases coming up ahead.
Yeah, and it's called Outsiders Spirits, right?
Outsider Spirits.
They are the outsiders to the whiskey industry, right?
Very much so.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, very cool. And then they linked up with you, and we could talk more about the whole story about how those two guys got together, and then how they got you involved as well. That's going to be that's kind of our cliffhanger there, Matt.
Yeah, I like it
for round two. So, and we could talk more. We'll talk about the palate and the finish on this Legacy Batch 1 Whiskey JYPSI when we come back in just a minute. But let's take a quick break. Let's get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Ari Sussman, the whiskey maker with Whiskey JYPSI, in just a minute.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky. Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the second round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here, we are live here in the Bourbon Life Studios.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Me and my good friend, Matt. Matt, how's it going out there in the room of the living in the basement?
It's great to be live, I got to say, Mark.
Yeah.
It really is. Things are going great. How are you doing in Mission Control there, Houston?
It's good, man. So far so good. Knock on wood, right?
Yeah.
So always happy to be podcasting. It was my first day back to work from a week-long staycation, and that's always a difficult adjustment. Tired at the end of the day, and then I always get to this point. We start podcasting, and I'm like, I feel re-energized. Just excited to be doing this, and we've got a great guest on the show tonight for sure, man. So I am super excited and ready to jump into round two. So Matt, before we do that, you want to tell everybody who we have with us here tonight?
Absolutely. How can you not be excited? We've got great sponsors and we've got a great guest joining us.
That's exactly right.
Again for the third time, and here back on the second round, morning, noon, night, whenever it is you're listening to the Bourbon Life Podcast. He's the whiskey maker for Outsider Spirits, Ari Sussman. Ari, welcome back. So great to have you with us.
It's great to be back for the trifecta.
Yeah, man, that's right. Number 3. There's very few people that have attained the level of a 3-time guest. So you're like maybe only one of the 3 people that have done that. So
oh wow,
yeah, man.
Is it like Saturday Night Live if you host 5 times to get a jacket?
You get a jacket.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to get like a Bourbon Life jacket made for everybody so we can ship it out to people. 5-time guest, man. You get a plaque or something, right? That'd be great. So at the break, we were talking about the brand Outsider Spirits, talking about Eric Church, country music superstar, and Raj Alva, who's an entrepreneur, and they got together. So can you kind of go into detail on that story, kind of how they got together, what prompted them to decide to do this, and then how you got involved with them as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So Eric and Raj met at a golf tournament of all places. They were playing in a golf tournament, and they were randomly paired together. And it's my understanding that that Raj, the sort of consummate businessman, got to the round on time, totally ready to go at tea time. And it's possible that that Eric Church, rock star, man of the night, poet,
A little late.
yeah, it might have been a couple minutes late, and so maybe the relationship didn't get off necessarily on the right foot. Might have been some frustration about tea times, but I think very closely they figured out that despite different backgrounds, despite just different lot of things, they vibed. They got along really well, and sometimes when you get together with people, there's certain people that you get together with, and the ideas just start flowing. Right? There's just these folks, and
Sure.
you get in the same room with them, and all of a sudden, it's like the conduits are open, and you're feeling full of hope, and the ideas are flowing, and and the two of them are kind of like that. So they share a love of whiskey, and decided that would be interesting to sort of explore the world of whiskey, but not in the traditional celebrity whiskey way. Right. So a traditional celebrity whiskey is you have someone with a lot of followers and you slap their name on a bottle and you sell it for a bunch of money, and then you try to flip it as quickly as possible. They didn't want to do that. They both actually really love whiskey and they're kind of know what's going on in the world of whiskey and whiskey innovation and all of that. They're really passionate about it, and they travel the world and they know the best whiskeys everywhere. And I think they wanted to, put their hat in the ring and try it for themselves and see if they could create something that would be interesting and on par with some of their favorite whiskeys out there. So that's how they met, and that's sort of how they envisioned the project. It wasn't at all as a celebrity brand. And if you look at the bottle, it doesn't say Eric Church's name.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say something about that, because most celebrity brands, it's gonna have a name plastered right across it, or something. But this, there's nothing on here that says Eric Church.
Is it a celebrity brand if it doesn't have the celebrity's name plastered around? I don't know. This is a philosophical question, but Eric Church, his involvement is absolutely critical in every step, every decision-making step, from the liquid concept to execution to design and all of that. But we're not emblazoning his name on the label in order to, sell products. He's actually really passionate. Both he and Raj are very passionate about the whiskey making process and the integrity of the brand. And this is what happens when you have people who aren't just looking to flip a quick buck.
So they got together and they played golf, probably got drunk on the golf course and said, hey, this is a great idea. Let's start a whiskey brand. So then they started looking for someone to help them. And they're like, hey, we found this guy. He's awesome. So did you know Raj or Eric before all this happened? I mean, was there any connection there, or how did that come about that you got involved with this?
Not personally.
Okay.
I was aware of Eric Church's music.
Okay.
I didn't know Raj.
Okay.
Turns out he grew up in Michigan, about an hour from where I am right now.
Michigan guys, what's up?
I know, right? Yeah. He went to college just down the road. Wow. And I was aware of Eric Church because it's hard kind of not to be aware of Eric Church if you're into music. I'm really into music. I love music. I love all kinds of genres, and to hear what people are into. And I like I've always been a fan of the sort of outlaw country music. Mm-hmm. And Eric is very much, I don't know if he would say he's kind of holding that mantle, but it's clear that tradition flows through his music. And so I was aware of him sort of from that angle as someone who's keeping a really great musical tradition alive and well.
Gotcha.
And sometimes you get phone calls when you're a whiskey maker, because there are so many folks out there looking to develop brands. And I personally, I and other people get phone calls not infrequently. And it's usually like, hey, I've got a celebrity. He or she wants to put their name on a bottle and flip it for a lot of money. Are you interested? And the answer is no. That has zero, that doesn't sound interesting at all.
Right.
I understand why people do that. And I understand, that they need production people to help kind of develop and create the spirit and all of that. And there's no shame in that game. But the notion of having, of selling someone's name on yet another commodity product just isn't interesting. We have a short amount of time here, and we should do things that are at least interesting. Yeah. And so they reached out to me and they said that they were truly looking to be innovative, that this, yes, a celebrity is involved in this brand, but no, it's not really a celebrity brand. It's really focused on innovation, quality, and sort of exploring the unknown, or at least the cutting edge of whiskey making, where it is now, where it can go. And that's kind of what they pitched, and they were curious to know what I could bring to that kind of general idea, what specifics, what kind of whiskeys we could bring to that general idea. And so, after the first phone call, where they said this wasn't just a celebrity brand, I should really think about it, I went and listened to basically all of Eric's music. I knew some hit songs. I wasn't as familiar with his entire repertoire. And I went back and I listened to it all and was very impressed, and was particularly impressed with his ability. We talked about the outlaw music tradition, which definitely flows through him, but he's like, there's other stuff, and there's arena rock, there's some of that coming through, there's rock and roll, there's southern right. rock, there's Appalachian, like Scottish folk song melodies coming through. And what struck me about Eric's music as much as anything was his ability to weave these musical traditions together, sort of into the form of country music. Yes, it sounds like country, but if you give it a close listen, there's like a lot going on there, and he's creating music by pulling these various threads together. Inspired by his musical stylings, I thought about what would a whiskey be like that took different whiskey making traditions and tried to kind of blend them together in the form of American music. And by form, I mean, this is where the idea of riffing on mash bills came from, because it's in the form of a bourbon, but I'm pulling together this like bourbon tradition, and we've got these really great traditions coming out of Canada, and there's this emerging single malt tradition. Yep. And so it's like we decided to merge all these different whiskey making traditions, regardless of where they come from, into a unique whole. So the concept for this actually came right out of Eric's music. I mean, in a totally non-BS way, listen to his music, and this is the whiskey that was envisioned.
Gotcha. Well, that makes sense. I mean, it's not Eric's first foray into whiskey. He had the collaboration, I guess, there with Jack Daniels, right? So his name was on a very, very popular release that Jack Daniels had done, the Eric Church release. So obviously, I mean, do you think did that kind of give him like the whiskey bug? Was that kind of an impetus for him to be like, man, this is really fun. I really enjoy this. Or I mean, have you had that conversation at all with him, and how that kind of make him want to do more?
I'm a fan of that song, Jack Daniels. I'm a fan of the collaboration that he did. I mean, listen, he's the second person to ever have his name on a bottle of Jack Daniels. The first was Frank Sinatra.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's amazing. Yeah. Now, the fact that and he's very much, we're all still very much fans of Jack Daniels as a brand.
Sure.
I think Eric included, and I think what Whiskey Gypsy is a chance to sort of craft. He could craft his own story instead of working with an established brand. I mean, talk about not dialing it in. Talk about someone who has this creative streak that can't be suppressed, right? You could very easily just continue to put your name on a bottle on an established brand that has distribution in every corner of civilization. Or you could kind of blaze your own path and be innovative and try to be creative and experiment. Kudos to both Raj and Eric for choosing that path, because most people wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because when I tell people about you, or people ask about you, or I mention you, I mean, I always refer to you as the mad scientist because your blending skills, the things that you do, I've always been impressed with what you've done. Ari, and this is like next level, taking a 99.1 bourbon and then taking a 20-year-old Canadian rye and blending that with a 4-year-old single malt. I mean, that's something that most people wouldn't think about doing, and then doing it in the percentages, like you said, of almost like a bourbon mash bill. I mean, can you just kind of talk about that? What was it that really made you say, okay, this is the way I want to do this?
Really was listening to Eric's music.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I mean, it was, I thought if we can do with whiskey what he's done with music, then
okay.
First of all, there's a bunch of mash bills, and there's now spirits available from all over the world. And there can be a series of releases here that are all riffs on that theme.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
All different, but they also kind of create a narrative arc. They all kind of work together, but they stand alone. It's almost like, tracks on an album. They're all their own thing, but there's kind of like this through line. And it seemed like a really great challenge. And then the fact that Eric and Raj were willing to have the patience of going out and finding all of these grain-forward spirits and coming back to, whiskey is an agricultural item. It's not some commodity good.
Right.
Like it comes from, it's in many ways similar to wine. It's very similar to wine in that regard. It very much comes from the earth. There's seasonal variability in the grains. The grains are different depending on how the growth season was and where they come from. So, yeah.
It's like terroir of whiskey, right?
That's an ongoing conversation. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting conversation. And in a way, what we're tasting here, this blend of whiskeys from wherever they come from. Future releases will have some whiskeys from some far off places as well. It's terroir is one thing. That's an expression of the earth, like an expression of a single place. And what we're doing here is almost like it's taking a different path, maybe, which is it's blending these different whiskeys together, these different places together.
Yeah. So is that the journey? Because there's a lot of things with the packet, and we'll talk about the bottle later. But the marketing itself, but it's called Whiskey JYPSI. It's spelled differently, but than a gypsy. But obviously, I would assume that means like a gypsy. A traveler, a wanderer. This one, it's called the Legacy series, right? But this one's called the Journey itself. And then on the back, it says that this is, I think it says. Well, it's a groundbreaking, but it says tradition reimagined. So there's a lot of things kind of there unpacking. It's tradition reimagined. It's a journey. It's a whiskey gypsy. Can you kind of talk about how all that plays together?
Yeah, well, I should say the name Whiskey JYPSI comes from one of Eric's songs, a song called Never Break Heart.
Yeah. Okay.
Really fantastic song. Even if country music's not your thing, you should check out this song. I was just listening to it the other day, and I was thinking, this is a song that it takes a special person to write. There's a lot, if you're into poetry or there's some really great wordplay in this song. Just like kind of cool things going on with words, but there's also a particularly, I think, depth of feeling in the song. It's a special song. He has a bunch of songs, and Never Break Heart is. He's got a lot of songs that make me feel that way, like a surprising number. But Never Break Heart in particular, there's a line where he talks about lives are made for chances, which reminds me kind of his spirit, and in terms of he could have gone the easy way a number of times, but he's redefined himself in terms of music and in terms of whiskey and all of these. So that's where the name came from, was from that song.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, very cool. Matt, let's talk about the palate and the finish on this one. What do you pick up on this?
Well, first, I think it's a huge challenge to take these three different mash bills that are completely nomadic of each other, just in their nature.
Nomadic. I like that.
It kind of plays along with the Whiskey JYPSI theme, right?
That's right.
This is a 99.1 corn, Canadian 21%, or 21% of a Canadian rye, which is 91 rye, 9 malt, and then 100% malted barley. Those are standalone products, kind of as nomadic as one could be from all different perspectives and areas, locations, and to play with them and bring them together and make the end product and in that kind of fun way that you did with the 70-21-9 Ari is super impressive. And I think it definitely shows on the palate. I actually got a lot of ripe fruit on the front of the palate, a lot of cherries, a lot of dark stone fruits. And then some of the rye comes through with a sweetness that to me was like baking spice and kind of like waffle cone type aromas. Then like a nice vanilla cream down it as we like come through the back of the palate, but then good spice from the rye, those nice cereal grains from the malt come through. Again, kind of like the nose, there's a lot that it's really complex, a lot that can really play with the senses, but it just drinks really well. It's homogeneous. It's got a lot of good flavor and it tastes just really good. It's blended exquisitely.
Yeah, I agree with that, Matt. You know, when I first tasted this, it really just reminds me of drinking like a super fine, rare 15, 17-year-old bourbon, or even a rye whiskey. But it just something about it, man. It just drinks like such a unique product. I can't explain it. Matt, you did a great job on descriptors on that one. But a lot of those characteristics that I mentioned on the nose still carry over. This does not drink like 115 proof. To me, It drinks much easier than, and that's kind of a bad term. I hate to say it drinks easy, but it does not drink like 115. So Ari, is this after you blended it, did you proof it down some, or is this actually the combination of what you guys got once you blended everything together?
Yeah, we proofed it down just a little bit. Just a little bit. It's a point or two, a proof point or two below actual cask.
Okay. So, but not much. So you're really not changing the profile of the whiskeys really that much at all with that little bit of water, right? So
we tasted through a lot of spirits that represent corn, a lot of spirits that would represent rye, and a lot of whiskeys that would represent malt. So we had a good sense of what these three spirits together would taste like.
Gotcha. So in terms of the palate and the finish, was there anything that Matt missed?
I'm sure there's tons that I've missed.
It of course, everyone tastes spirits differently.
Sure.
Not only, especially if they've had coffee that day or garlic the day before or whatnot. So what I'll tell you is that this is a great spirit to revisit because different flavors and aromas will come out, depending on what you ate earlier in the day or what time of day it is, or honestly, the pH of your saliva is going to affect what you taste. I'm also a big fan of this viscosity. There's a heaviness to it, and we love aroma, we love flavor, but mouthfeel is something that we also look for here. So that was really important to us as well.
Yeah. So now you said when you add water, and I've not done that yet, but I poured myself some more just so everybody knows. You said when you add water, does it opens it up? Does it become like a more viscous feeling when you add water? I mean,
to me, it does.
Does it? Okay. I thought gotcha. Well, I may have to try that for round 3. I don't know. I'm a big fan of that higher proof stuff. But again, it does not drink to me like 115 proof at all. Matt, what do you think?
No, I certainly agree with you, Mark. I think it's very approachable at the proof. It's got good weight in the mouth, like you were talking, Ari, with nice, heavy, oily feel to it. Drinks really, really well. Yeah.
I will point out that, because you had mentioned that from the aroma that it has some characteristics of bourbon. You got the wood and the leather and things that you'd attribute to bourbon. For me, at least, in the mouth, it doesn't have that sort of the woodiness
right
attributed to bourbon. In fact, it's almost like a medium plus, what I would call a medium plus mouthfeel, more like a European whiskey, kind of with a little bit of extra oak. So it has a sort of a finesse and an elegance, I think, because it's this medium plus body, as opposed to, bourbon is kind of like the super Tuscan, like the big jam bomb,
right?
Like all in flavor. This has a little bit more restraint, I think, and hopefully just a little bit more elegance, and it doesn't drink like a big full flavored bourbon. It drinks a little bit lighter than that, but in that lightness, you're getting characteristics coming through that might otherwise be obscured by the wood.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. So it's not like an oak bomb. So, but I love the finish on it because, I'm sitting here listening to you talk and I can still just, all these different flavors are still coming up. And even a minute after I've tasted it, I'm still getting flavors off the finish on this one, which is great. So, Matt, what about same thing there?
Yeah.
You agreeing on that?
Yeah. Nice mouthfeel on the finish too. It's not overpowering, but at the same time, it leaves a finish in your mouth and also it just in your mind too. Like you can kind of taste the finish changing a little bit and it's not overpowering so that you're ready to go back for your next sip to kind of see what delicacies are there, what else you can chase out of it. Whereas a lot of stuff is very overpowering and you take a sip and suddenly you need to rest and get like a little water or something in between before you're ready for your next go at it.
Yep, that makes sense. Well, guys, we are at the end of round 2. So let's take a quick break, get a word from our wonderful sponsors, and we'll come back with more with Ari Sussman, the whiskey maker with Outsiders Spirits, in just a minute. From our good friends at The Stave comes Lexington's newest hot spot to meet up with friends, have fun, and eat some great food. District 7 Social is a social and beer hall, but it's a lot more than that. Located in Lexington's Distillery District, it's the home of Lexington's first duck pin bowling lanes, and it also features a self-serve beer wall. That's right, self-serve. And if you want more, they've got it. You can try one of their delicious cocktails from the bar or order some great German fusion food from their on-site eatery, Germanish. So what are you waiting for? Be seen, be social. District 7 Social. All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here live tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, man?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great out here. How are you live in the Bourbon Life Studios in there?
I'm still alive. I'm still sipping on my delicious Whiskey JYPSI here in my beautiful Bourbon Capital Guild glass.
I made the mistake of leaving the bottle in there with you.
You did, man. I keep pouring it up because it's so good. Usually we taste 3 different expressions. So I'm like, man, I'm going to have to make it through 3 rounds with one expression.
Yeah, so you're
I
tasting
just keep
one
pouring.
expression 3 different times.
I keep pouring it and keep pouring it. Exactly right. There's nothing wrong with that, Matt. Hey, but before we get into the show and our guest, Matt, I do have to say, and I can't forget, I forgot to do this I can't believe I forgot to do it in the first round, I should say. You've got a big Ironman race coming up this weekend. This show comes out. I know you're going to be like, man, we can't talk about me, but you know what? I'm going to talk about you, Matt, because you do these Ironman races. You kill it. It's awesome, man. And our listeners love it. When I post about it on Facebook or Instagram, people are like, oh, that's awesome. Congratulations, Matt. So this show comes out Friday. You've got a big race on Sunday, right? Lake Placid?
Yeah, a big race on Sunday in a couple days. So let's talk about it after I hopefully have covered all 140.6 miles of it.
Yeah, well, let's hope you only do 140.6. Let's hope you don't.
Yeah, let's hope I don't take a wrong turn somewhere. Let's hope I get all of them.
I love living vicariously through you and your Ironman journeys, Matt. So obviously, I wish you the best of luck. And I'm going to be following you on the app, of course, all day long. So everybody listening on Friday and Saturday, make sure you check Matt out and check in with us on Instagram. I'll post how he does, obviously. I have no doubt you're going to do great. You will. So, all right, Matt, I've embarrassed you enough, man. Sorry about that. Let's move on. Let's tell everybody who we have with us tonight on the show.
Absolutely. We have a great guest with us. He is the whiskey maker for Outsiders Spirits. He's back for the third and unfortunately final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast, Ari Sussman. Ari, welcome back. So great to have you with us.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for bringing me back.
Yeah, I don't think you were quite sure where he was going with that, unfortunately, because I'll tell you, like,
the unfortunate third round. We'd love to be sitting here doing this all evening, I'm sure.
Yeah. We got to do this live sometime, man. It's your third time on the show, but we need to get together at some point and actually do a live show with you, Ari. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Sit around and drink. We're gonna make that happen. We're gonna figure that out, man. So we'll definitely make that happen. But we are talking about Whiskey JYPSI tonight. New release. This is all over Instagram, social media, man. They're killing it, and I think that's a great place to start. Let's just talk about the marketing. Let's talk about everything going on with this. And I just want to I'm going to throw this out there that a month or so ago, I got this in the mail. It's a book. And I'm like, I'm like, what the hell is this? I'm like, I'm not going to read a book, right? I mean, and then I open it up and it's like, oh, wait, there's a whiskey sample inside. There's nothing to read, right? It's a whiskey sample. Man, this has got to be probably the most creative marketing that I have seen for a brand. Absolutely loved it. And then shortly thereafter, a couple weeks ago, got this bottle. I mean, gorgeous bottle, gorgeous label. The bottle itself has this molded glass. I mean, the dimples that are throughout it, the stopper, everything is just, man, it's just like next level marketing. I mean, there's no question about it. So let's unpack that.
Sure, absolutely.
Tell us all about that, Ari.
Well, so Eric and Raj have very strong aesthetic senses, and they knew that they wanted a big, heavy bottle. We knew that we wanted a really deep punt. I hope everyone at home gets a chance to hold this bottle at some point, because the punt on the bottom is very, very deep. And in fact, some people on Instagram suggest that you could turn the bottle over and it could be like a big ashtray, because there's a little notch at the bottom.
If you smoke cigarettes, you can put your cigarette right there.
Right. In the dimples, the idea for the dimples came from, Eric's got this land just outside of Nashville. He was walking it, and when he first moved in, and they found some sort of metal, hand-hammered looking thing. And the assumption is it's an old still. So we're not sure if it was, or maybe it's just some sheet metal hand-hammered, but it got us talking about what handcrafted means in the whiskey industry, and how some people even have hand-hammered stills, or certainly there's a tradition of hand-hammered stills. And so the idea for the dimples in the bottle is very much, this is like hand-hammered copper.
Nice.
And with the color of the whiskey having this like beautiful red-brown copper patina look, we thought it would be appropriate for the shoulders of really the entire bottle to have this sort of hand-hammered look to give a sense that this is something that's really created by hand.
Yeah, very nice. And the label, talk about the copper, the labeling, the lettering, the topper, everything, even the logo, everything. So tell me about the logo. I couldn't figure that one out. Do you know what is that Eric's logo, or is that just for the brand, or what?
It's a W and a J for Whiskey Gypsy in the style of like an eagle, like a spread eagle.
Oh my God.
With the talons coming down. Man. And then the only thing that really gives you any indication that Eric's involved is there's two little letters at the
his birthday.
Top. Yeah,
is that his birthday?
Right.
Or his birth year? I think it says EC.
That's right. His birth year.
Yeah, I think it's 65.
Eric Church, right. 70 something.
Oh, 70, yeah. I can't do that. I can't do Roman numerals, but I saw that earlier today, and I got my magnifying glass out. It was so small. I'm like, what is that? I'm like, oh, EC. I'm like, oh, Roman numerals. It's something with a 5 at the end.
Yeah.
But no, again, did not realize that's a WJ.
There's a lot of Easter eggs here. There's a lot of things to discover.
I can't believe I missed that.
Layers and layers of things going on here.
But that's really cool. I mean, that's great. Just the marketing, everything. Like I said, man, the book itself was really cool to get that, but then to get the bottle, it's like, man, holy crap! This is awesome. Heavy bottle, like you said, beautiful bottom, the dimple in the bottom of it there. Wait, what'd you call it? I'm sorry.
Punt.
What's that called?
The dimple.
The punt.
The punt. Yeah, the very bottom of the bottle.
The punt.
Okay. And the reason it has this deep punt is because when you have the bottle on a shelf, it shows this gradation of color from the bottom to the top.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
You just get a sense of the depth of the color going on.
Very nice, man. Very cool. So let's talk about the blending. Matt, we mentioned it off camera. I was going to say something about it, but you probably want to talk about that. So I'm just going to throw it to you and let you just do your thing.
Oh, I'm always curious to hear about it, because as I kind of mentioned, it seems that in the last round, these are three very different spirits that were blended together, all with very different characteristics. I know whenever I personally hear about an older Canadian rye, Ari Sussman comes to mind as kind of the connoisseur of a lot of the older Canadian ryes. And so just talk us through how you went about creating this, what flavors or how you made everything blend and meld together. And was there a flavor you were going for, a theory, or did you just kind of grab it by the seat of the pants and let it ride?
All good questions. So, there's a couple different types of, just to zoom back a little bit, there's a couple different types of whiskey makers. You have sort of chemical engineer scientists who tend to be really, really wonderful at mashing and fermentation and distillation and those things that require exacting knowledge of processes like yeast metabolism and saccharification and all the things, all the scientific chemical engineering things in turning something from grain into new make spirit, right? Once you're at new make spirit and you put it in the barrel, in a lot of ways, the traditional role of the distiller goes away. The distiller's job is to create spirit and put it in a barrel. And once that spirit hits a barrel, it's a kind of a different skill set that's involved in taking that into a finished product. And it's far more, in my opinion, artistic than scientific. And in the same way that sort of scientific training helps someone be a really good distiller, I believe that there's like maybe no better training to become a whiskey blender than to be a bartender, than to make cocktails, than to blend as many things together as possible, keeping the proportions the same, tasting a lot of things, developing your palate. And, this was a really exciting blend because oftentimes I'm working with grain and trying to figure out the right character profiles that we're trying to create in a new make whiskey. Yeast selection, fermentation conditions, distillation techniques, what kind of still to use to develop a certain kind of characteristic. That's all kind of on the scientific whiskey making, the distiller side. But on the blending side, which is just a different skill set and a different mentality, it's all about freedom. It's all about artistic expression. How you can bring flavors together in the same way that hopefully a painter brings together colors, or a musician puts, can adorn sound, can adorn time with sound. It's a very different skill set, and it's been really great over the past couple of years to see a number of blenders kind of come to the forefront, bringing sort of bartending traditions or even wine blending traditions or perfumery traditions into the whiskey world. And I think that's like kind of a locus of a lot of innovation that's going on. But once we learned, once we kind of came up with the idea that we were going to pull together, it was going to be a cross-category whiskey blend, that we were going to really look at the characteristics and the traditions of different, types of whiskey out there, that we wanted to blend a bourbon, a very old kind of whiskey from a tradition point of view, with American single malt, which is a very new tradition, an emerging tradition. And then in terms of blending in how to select components, we were looking for components where you could actually taste the grain. Again, this is the reason why we chose 7 and 8-year-old bourbon as opposed to 10 and 12-year-old bourbon, because the grain comes through really well. It's also the reason why we chose a relatively young malt component, a 4-year-old malt component. Now, what's important about that is malted barley has so many unique characteristics that, again, can become obscured, subsumed by wood character, that if you really want to taste that grain, again, whiskey's an agricultural product, if you really want to taste the grain from that it came from, you got to tamp down that wood character and really allow the grain to shine through. So we selected our inputs based on how well they expressed the grain character we were looking for. And then once we knew, sort of had a general sense of 2 or 3 corn spirits that we loved, 2 or 3 rye spirits that we loved, 2 or 3 malted barley spirits, now it just becomes make a version of each one of those possible combinations. And everyone on the team got to taste it in a blind tasting and give their input. We actually work with a number of other whiskey blenders and distillers from the industry who got blind samples and were kind of led through a blind tasting of different sorts of blends to determine which ones they thought were the most compelling. So it was, talk about a journey, it's called the journey, right?
Right.
It was this journey because there's not really a playbook to how to make a whiskey like this. We're kind of, developing it as we go along. So, between sourcing the products, putting those products through blind taste tests, then compiling these various blends, putting them through trusted palates, that was the process by which we blended it. took a very long time. It was very laborious, but very rewarding.
Very cool. That's what, I'm glad Matt asked that. And I was going to ask that in terms of, like if they just said, all right, take these barrels and just do whatever. And then let us know, kind of give you like free reign to put something together and then kind of go from there. But it sounds like everybody was really involved in the process was that from the get-go, or did they kind of just put you and say, hey, put some things together and then we can kind of go from there?
Everyone was involved from the get-go. And It was more like taste samples of various barrel lots. And if you like the sample, then you can acquire the lot of barrels. So it wasn't like walking into a library and saying, I want that one and that one and that one. It's like having dozens of spirit samples in front of you and having, talk about a privilege, an incredible privilege as a whiskey maker, to have the ability to taste this and say, I think this is going to become a component in our library.
Gotcha.
And after going through and tasting various spirits, being able to bring sort of the most interesting, compelling ones and create a whiskey library so that future legacies can be created. It's been really, really fascinating. Yeah,
very nice. Because I was gonna ask that in terms of like the barrels. These aren't barrels that like Ari has set in a back room somewhere, right? This is like outsider spirits going out. You guys are finding these barrels, or they're finding these barrels, and with your assistance.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Very
so
cool.
These are we didn't walk into an existing barrel vault. We're very much going all around and taking great pains to taste whiskeys from various places and to think about how they might fit together in ways that we haven't tasted before.
Well, something I think is really cool. Two things. One, you recently, the whiskey was actually awarded double gold at San Francisco. And then also Fred Minnick did a review of the whiskey and said that so far, and he did this back in June, so like a month ago, said that this was definitely one of the top 10 whiskeys that he's tasted all year. So that's pretty big accolades, especially from San Francisco, but then also from Fred, one of the most respected whiskey critics out there. So can you talk about it from your aspect as the whiskey maker? What does that mean to you to have those type of accolades and that kind of acknowledgement and recognition?
Well, it's amazing to hear that. And it's validating that people who know whiskey would accept a whiskey that's markedly different. I feel like this could be pulled out of a lineup. You would know what it is, because it's a unique, different type of whiskey. It doesn't fit into any sort of category. Really proud about San Francisco. This is a whiskey for which there is no category. Right. Oftentimes when you submit a whiskey to a competition, you check the box. It's a bourbon. It's a bourbon,
right,
between 4 and 7 years old. It's a rye whiskey. It's an American single malt, and you have to check the box. There's not always a category for other. And we decided at the outset that we wanted to be very free about the whiskeys that we bring into our blends. And in order to have that freedom, what it means is that you're not going to fit into the existing sort of silos that people have created around whiskeys. In fact, this is innovative in large part because you can't check any of those boxes. This is kind of a weird way of doing things. And it's an experimental way of doing things, and it's untested in the market. And the fact that the founders would have faith in this product, and the fact that critics seem to enjoy it, we're thrilled about it. We make a whiskey so people will enjoy it, and so they'll be able to taste something new that maybe they haven't had before. This is the first of several, of a series.
Right.
And the fact that people liked it, even though it is different, is really validating and wonderful. We're happy about it.
Very cool. Well, speaking of liking it, I hope you guys don't mind, but I may pour myself just a little bit more to make it through round 3.
Sorry, Matt.
I know, worst decision I've made all night.
Oh,
not taking the bottle with me.
You should have kept the bottle with you in there, man. But that's okay. But so let's talk about the future. Kind of alluded to the fact that there will be more. There will be different batches, and I saw on the website as I was doing my research for the show that there is a batch 2 planned. And I love the name. So when I saw the name, I'm like, yeah, you've got to be, Ari has to be involved because this is you, right? So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, batch 2 is called Batch 2, which will be coming out eventually. Yeah. We want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to try Batch 1, sort of the first opening salvo, right, of this theme of whiskeys that we're putting together, this kind of series. Number 1 is called The Journey. Number 2 is called The Alchemist. I don't know if this is a reference to any individual, or maybe it could be a reference to the great book by Brazilian author Paulo Coelho called The Alchemist.
Or it could be a reference to Ari Sussman, the whiskey maker. I mean,
who knows, right?
There you go.
We're really excited about Batch 2. Will come out eventually. It's sort of in development. These things develop over a long time. You have to be very patient as a whiskey maker, obviously, not just because of the age statement, but whiskey changes as you blend it. So Batch 2 coming out down the line. In the meantime, folks can also expect other really cool products to come out that should take sort of bourbon fans on a new kind of journey, looking at some really unique wood finishes on fantastic, start off with really great age-stated whiskey that's put together. Then we're going to kind of be taking a bit of a tour to explore sort of the outer reaches of whiskey innovation with proper mature whiskey. And then maybe later down the line, some nice everyday drinkers. But what's happening at Outsider Spirits and with Whiskey Gypsy is sort of like this really nice conceptual framework to have international blending going on at the same time of sort of whiskeys at various price points.
Very nice. It's funny because in the first round, you mentioned something about the Legacy series kind of being this higher end thing. And I was thinking, oh, wait, does that mean that they're planning to do these other releases that are kind of a little different? So it sounds like that's on the horizon potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that in the future there'll be some really special releases coming out.
Awesome. So you will be involved with that as well then, it sounds like. Okay. Yes. Very cool.
If Ari Sussman is saying new innovative stuff that we've not seen and not tried before, then I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, you're in, right? We could do a whole show about Ari Sussman's innovation and resurrection. Well, innovation and resurrection of Format Rose and Rye, right? We could do a whole show about that. Maybe we should do that at some point and talk about all the different innovations and things that you've been involved with, man. Not just the whiskey brands, but very cool. So I was going to ask you what the future looks like for Outsider Spirits and Whiskey Gypsy, but it sounds like we kind of just got
I think we just tipped our hand a little bit.
Yeah.
There's some really interesting things coming down the pike.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. We're close to the end of round 3 here, but where can our listeners find more information about the brand and about the different things that are going on with Whiskey Gypsy?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for asking. The brands can follow us on Whiskey Gypsy. We're on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Definitely worth checking out. We've got some really cool information. We talk about there are even more Easter eggs that we didn't even discuss.
Oh, dang.
That if people go to the Instagram page, they might be able to sort out. We're not yet on TikTok. Are you guys on TikTok?
I've got the Bourbon Life has a TikTok account, but there's not been many posts there.
Yeah, fair enough. But folks can find Whiskey Gypsy at fine retailers in the state of Tennessee, as well as online through the website.
Okay, great.
Direct to consumer, wave of the future.
And I'm telling you, man, I mean, I'm just cracking this open. I couldn't resist it. I had the sample bottle and I knew you're coming on the show. I'm like, I'm going to save it. And then I got the full bottle and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to crack it. So I'm happy that I did, but man, I'm blown away, Ari. Well, I shouldn't say blown away because I'm not surprised by what you do and what you're able to accomplish. But the uniqueness of this mash bill, going back and look, I had to flip my notes over just again, the 70% bourbon, which is a blend of 2 different bourbons, and it's 99% corn. That's just, when I saw that, I was like, what? I mean, that's just something that most people would not anticipate. And then you throw in a 20-year-old Canadian rye, and then a 4-year-old single malt, American single malt. I mean, no, I don't know that anybody else in this world would think, hey, I'm going to take these different whiskeys and blend them together, and then to put this type of product out that wins a double gold, and it ranks, as a Fred Minnick top 10 for the first half of this year. And this is, I mean, it's delicious, man. I mean, just crazy what you've been able to do.
Yeah, it's been a privilege. Listen, this happens because of a big team. We'd love to say that this happens because of a single individual. That is not the case. It's amazing to be part of a team of creative, active people who get things done.
Yeah.
It's about this incredible group. It really is.
Awesome. Very nice. So final thoughts, though, before we wrap it up. We're at the end of round 3 here. Ari, anything final you want to add before we get out of here tonight?
Congratulations on 180 episodes.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's amazing. It's a sacred number to some people, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's just a massive accomplishment. You guys, there's a reason why you're so good at what you do, and the tops of what you do. You put in the time, you put in the work. 180 episodes that you're researching. We appreciate what you guys are doing.
Well, thanks, Ari. We appreciate that. We appreciate you guys, of course, as well. You know that. So, Matt, final thoughts before we wrap it up, man.
Hey, 180 would not have been possible without you, Ari. So, thank you.
That's right. You're three of them now, man. So,
Yeah, that's right.
We'd still be on 176 if it wasn't for you.
Yeah, thanks for talking us through what you all have been up to, what you've been up to, and taking us down the journey here, no pun intended, on this. This has been a really great eye-opening experience, and hearing about what you all are doing, what's coming in the future, and what we have to expect has been really fun. So always great to sit down and connect with you. Let's hope the next time we're in person.
Absolutely. Great to see you guys.
I agree with that. All right. Thanks so much, man. Like I said, when we got this scheduled, I was like, I'm excited. This is going to be great. Love to have you on the show. Third time guest, like I said, one of only, I think, 3 people that have done that. So we're thrilled to have you back. I can't wait to hang out with you again in person, hopefully before September, but if not September, I'm looking forward to that for sure. Great job with this, man. I mean, I'm really impressed with what you've put together here. It's not surprising. I don't want to say it like, I expected that, but knowing your involvement, knowing what you're able to do, knowing what you have done, it's not really a surprise to me that this is what it is. But the uniqueness of this product is crazy. I mean, just what you put together to make this product, but I'm not surprised that it's as good as it is because you're involved with it. And I think anything you're involved with, you do a great job. There's no question about that, man. So always great to have you on the show, and really enjoy being able to hang out with you, and look forward, like I said, to seeing you in September. So with that said, though, I do want to thank all of our sponsors. Thank you guys for everything you do for us. Thank you to our listeners. We appreciate you all tuning in, whatever time of day it is, like Matt says, morning, noon, or night, whenever it is you listen to us. We couldn't do this show without your support. We appreciate that. If you want to reach out to us, feel free to send us an email. You can contact us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. You can also reach out to us on Instagram or Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can join our private Facebook group, The Bourbon Lifers. We'd love to have you in there as well. We have some fun conversations and things that go on in there. So please feel free to join that group as well. And then if you'd feel so inclined, please leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform, as long as it's a 5-star. But we appreciate that. We appreciate you guys very much. And thanks for listening to us. With that said, I'm going to wrap it up, send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.